Hi, Matt.
Hiya, John. How you doing?
Yeah, great. And you?
I'm all right. Hey, thanks ever so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
This is the first time we've done one of these recordings, talking to one of my peers about their health and safety career, about how they got to where they got to and what they're working on currently. And I know you've just finished a huge project. I'll just give a quick overview of your career. With your bio, it seems such a short bio when I know you've been involved in the health and safety profession since I think the early 90s. Sorry to remind you of that when you did our certificate and diploma, and obviously you've been involved in a lot since then. So lots of experience, and what I'm about to say doesn't do that experience justice. But I took this bio from some work you do with SHP Online. So you started off in the construction industry and followed a path through project management, facilities management, where your focus is, I know, at the moment. I did like the bit in there about you first found a common interest certainly within IT, graduating from punch cards at the School Computer Society. So punch cards, there's a reference for the teenagers amongst us, through to the latest trends, and you've certainly kept your finger on the pulse with what's coming on and what's coming through. So why a career in health and safety then, John?
Right, that's a key question, I suppose. Well, started off really when I started off as a chartered surveyor, and that's my intro really to the construction industry. Or you could say my intro was really working with my father. He was a manual worker, engineer working on the tools. So during the school holiday, when I was about 15, 16, I used to go along and help him along with my uncle. It was very exciting for me because I felt that, it's my rite of passage, if you like, as a man. But I could see lots of unsafe behaviours. And the thing that my father gave me was what I would call site savvy. And interestingly, when I did chartered surveyor course, we had just one lesson on those days. It was the Health and Safety at Work Act. And that was health and safety. And when I was doing project management, we didn't see health and safety as an enabler, far from it. It's people coming along saying you couldn't do things and the law was all over the place. Didn't really make much sense to me, all these bits of legislation. Big sea change for me was when the six-pack come along. And thank you for reminding me. Yes, I'm a child of the 90s in that respect. But that was a big sea change because then I could see system in this. It wasn't just bits of obscure legislation or regulations or rules. I could actually see, this is how it all put together. I could see a wholeness, if you like. And I'm thankful to one of my initial mentors, who was Professor Patricia Layton. At that time, she was Professor of Employment Law at East Anglia University, and I went on a one-day course, and that really spun my mind around. I literally did a 180 degree, and I thought, this makes sense. This is what we should be doing. So
that must have been a great lecture if it was a one-day course and it changed.
Yes, it was. It's going through the effects of the six-pack, and then I took it.
Sorry, John. We should say for our international audience, the six-pack was a significant collection of pieces of legislation that came through, which looked at manual handling, which looked at DSE, which looked at provision use of work equipment, those sorts of things. And it certainly gave much more structure to health and safety law. And we all had a load of ACOPs, Approved Codes of Practice, we could all dive on as well. And well, not me, I was far too young, John. I was left field. So when John refers to the six-pack, it's just some UK-based legislation.
Yes, that's right. Or, obviously relevant to the EU and lots of other countries, I think, adopted it. Whereas, some countries still have a very prescriptive system. That's for sure, Matt. So that spun me around. And then I decided to go on a health and safety career. So I was really, really pleased that for a career in health and safety, you can get kicked off in a two-week course if you went for a certificate. So that's what I did. I did it with Ajax, and in fact the tutor for that, or the head tutor, we had some really brilliant tutors, I must say, on that course. And some of them went on to become luminaries in the safety industry. But the head tutor was Teresa Cowell, as she was then, who would later become Teresa Budworth,
Yeah,
who was CEO of NEBOSH.
certainly was. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it's a small world, isn't it? The health and safety, certainly within the UK, the health and safety training markets are certainly small, and you see the same kind of names coming up time and time again that people remember to be being taught by. Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on, obviously, went on to diploma and, you know, increased my professional career, and then did some writing for Kroner's and other those type of safety publications around that time, you know, from the 90s. The great thing with safety, I found facilities management and chartered surveying, it took me up to a point, and then I think they kind of lost their fascination. But the thing I found with safety, and I'm sure many other practitioners find the same, is that it covers such a wide area. There's always more to learn, and then there's more things that are changing, you know, that you have to learn.
Well, you know, it's everything, isn't it? It's from basic administration through to strategy at the other end, and then everything in between. You still need that technical knowledge, but you also need the people skills. You also need the management functions. You need to be able to deal with budgetary responsibilities. It really is. It really does capture so many facets, doesn't it, of the modern workplace? I agree. You know, and you've got to really like people as well, haven't you? And I know that comes out from having heard you speak and being able to engage with people. Otherwise, we won't be able to do our jobs, would we? So, but that brings me, go on.
I was going to say, that's your point is well made, really, Matt. You know, it is all about people, and the systems are there really to help the people.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget that, don't we? Sometimes I think the procedures wag the dog, as we say in the UK. So, something that why we started talking to each other initially, John, was because of this amazing project you've just been part of helping set up, and that's the Nightingale Hospital. Well, is still the Excel in London, but is currently being repurposed as a intensive care hospital. But John, you've just finished on the Nightingale project. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What your role was in setting it up? And I certainly want to ask you a few questions about it as well, if I may.
Yeah, and for those that are not familiar, and I fully appreciate there's probably not going to be many, because it definitely has had the spotlight in the media, and quite rightly so, because as Prince Charles said when he opened it, it is in these dark times a shining light. You know, people are getting the message all the time, and it seems to, a lot of people describe it as doom and gloom. And then this seems to be a way that, you know, we are helping, we're managing the situation. Anyway, to give the background, background goes back quite a while, because the UK has been preparing for a pandemic for quite a long time. There's an institute called the Emergency Planning College, and one of the things, they look at all sorts of emergencies, but pandemic's one that they often use for scenario planning. So I know this from a long time when we were looking at bird flu back in the 1990s, but that didn't really go pandemic. That's H5N1 influenza. And then, of course, if I think of my company in ISS, we did a lot of extensive pandemic planning for Ebola, but that didn't really kick off, thankfully. Right. So, you know, and all this really is helpful, because, you know, they do tend to follow a common pattern. In terms of Nightingale, company I work for, ISS UK, which is part of the Global Facilities Management, ISS AS, or I should say, we now also talk about workplace experience, and you know, that's another new thing, but that's for another webinar probably, Matt. So we also big vendors in the healthcare sector. You know, we run a couple of very big hospitals. We do catering, cleaning. In other hospitals, we do what we call hard services. So this is building services, engineering, and so on.
Right.
So, you know, we would be considered a trusted partner. So when this really kicked off majorly, and in fact, physicians have been looking this for a matter of weeks before the actual kickoff for Nightingale, looking at the planning, what was needed, you know, how to be done. but it really kicked off over the weekend of 21st, 22nd of March, and that's really when the senior NHS and British military or armed forces looked at Excel as a potential site for, it was described as a field hospital, and that's what really piqued my attention, because I thought, what is this going to be? What's going to, are they going to just put beds on bare concrete? Is it going to be very austere and Spartan? And we've seen all sorts of field hospitals around the world. If you go on BBC website, they do show field hospitals around the world, and they do vary from tent city, like that, to a fuller one. So,
John, just jump in there 1 second. For those people who aren't aware, or a large proportion of our students, learners are based internationally. The Excel is actually just a huge conference facility, and it's largely just big shells of buildings which are then built up for whichever exhibition is there. And I've been there many times with health and safety events. I'm sure John has with health and safety and facilities management, and it's a really, it's purpose-built events arena, soulless, I think it's fair to say, but once it's all arranged for a conference, it looks great, but the shell of it is just a very basic 4 walls with dividing walls in between it, John, really, isn't it? That's largely what the Excel is. It's got really good links, it's got, it's not far outside of London, so location-wise, it's good. But sorry to introduce, just give you some background.
No. I think that's very good. And you saying that, Matt, reminds me of something I saw in the BBC website, as I did that. One of the commentators described it as 2 aircraft hangars joined together.
Oh, yeah. It is huge. I don't know how far it is end to end, but
we argued about this because people said, it's a kilometre, but I think we come to the conclusion it's about 600 metres, because it was actually extended in 2008, and it was opened by Boris Johnson.
Okay. I know I've walked up and down it enough trying to find a coffee, but I've never really thought to sort of pace it out.
There's a little plaque that that he's put in there, and it's in the floor, so you'd see that in the anyway. But I've actually been there as an exhibitor when it's on the makeup breakdown thing, and what you usually see is just little bits of the hall.
Yes.
But when I actually went there, it was on the 26th. So by my reckoning, that's day 4. I got involved in the first week. So on the Wednesday afternoon, I was doing work like, for example, cost assessments and so on. So, we're putting together our health and safety system. And I visited it on the Thursday. And I was absolutely mind blown when, there's one area where they opened it up. They've got for those that have been there, and as you say quite rightly, Matt, it's the Centre for the Safety and Health Expo, and they had the shutter up, and it's the first time I've seen it end to end. I've seen a couple of bays opened up, and then I was absolutely, astonished to look at it and think, and then I think, this is going to have 2,000 beds in. That's one side, the other side, 2,000 beds, 4,000. Wow. So I was just thinking, how's this going to work? How's this all going to be done? But by that time, they had actually laid the vinyl floor. And that really gave me a big buzz, I have to say, because I thought to myself, I went there wondering what it was going to look like, because we hadn't really seen anything at that stage. There was a great thirst from the public. But I thought, once I saw that vinyl floor, it was hospital vinyl floor. And I thought, this is like a hospital. And I actually like the phrase that someone used, pop-up hospital. I like that one.
Yeah, well, it's less intimidating, certainly, than one of my colleagues, Hannah. I was asking him, "Have you got any questions for John?" And she said, "Oh, actually, I really don't like the language of field hospitals and intensive care units." And you're right, pop-up hospital sounds so much less intimidating, but it's a very serious space, isn't it? That's what you were involved in developing. I mean, from scratch, a hospital that ultimately, and let's hope it never transpires, but that could deal with, did you say 4,000 beds?
4,000 was the planning, and it's a very, the great thing about it is a very flexible space. So, you know, the use of them can change, and it's designed for flexibility. And that's its, you know, it's one of its secret sources really, is that it could be built, and it's using kind of exhibition technology, if you like. You know, the bed bays are made out of partitioning like you would see in exhibition stands. So,
well, to sort of get a feel for the size of the place, because of course it's not just putting 4,000 beds in. You know, it's not the Crimean War. You know, you're looking at pipe services, spark, you know, your oxygen supplies. It's very complex.
Indeed, and you know, that's one of the decisions that was design decisions, not through our company. You know, we were supplying are supplying the soft services there, the cleaning, the portering. You know, cleaners often get a good mention now, but don't forget the porters. You know, they do a good job in moving patients around. You know, it's a very involved task.
Well, I guess your porters are also dealing with hazardous waste as well, are they? That's all part of the portering role, is it?
Yeah, they deal with all sorts of things, logistics, what we call receipt and distribution. So, you know, it's no good having PPE delivered to the hospital if it's not, you know, available and getting to the people that need to. And that's what they do. You know, they'll take it from the store, make sure it gets to a central point, which at the moment, you know, the use of the building is really so well planned out and astonishing, because the bedsides obviously get a lot of, the ward side situation gets a lot of interest. But for example, the BBC site shows the 2 wards, but it doesn't show the bit in the middle that you've alluded to, Matt. And that's really become a very big logistics hub, which is really, really useful, because then you can shunt stuff to either side of the hospital, and it's there in bulk. You know, it's dealing with the problem at scale, which Nightingale is. You know, it's looking at a big problem, and the solution is similarly coming at scale. You know, it's the biggest hospital, certainly in this country, and probably in the world. You know, there are bigger ones, but they're made out of different other hospitals put together on a campus.
Well, how did you know where to start? So you've got, and we'll get back to the swiftness of this project from when the go-ahead was given to when Prince Charles opened. Open sounds an odd phrase, but you know, sort of launched the availability of the hospital. How did you know where to start? So you're going, right, John, we've got this new project. We're going to have to stick 4,000 beds in. You're one piece of the machine. There's the military involved. There's the other contractors involved. There's there's the trades involved. How long does it take to start gearing up for things to start in an incredibly short space of time, obviously? But from you as a practitioner, how did you know immediately to what your focus was going to be?
So, you know, I always say, if you've got a convincing system, that's where your success is. So, you know, if people failed, they probably didn't have a convincing system. So, you know, that would be one of my epithets, if you like. And so, actually, you know, it was all about developing the system, but that showed where work needed to be done. So you then have to look at the priorities, and a big priority for us is really the type of business that we do, soft services. You really need a lot of manpower in there. Right. So the way that, bear in mind, we couldn't really take staff easily from our healthcare operation because they're busy keeping the other hospitals going. So what we've had to do is put a lot of emphasis on training. So it's running the training, getting people through, and even people that we got from other healthcare situations, you know, they need to be trained in the system that's working at Nightingale, which, you know, might be different to the hospitals they're in. Other people, you know, people see cleaning as cleaning, but that's not so. You know, it is a very specialized area. You're working with chemicals, all sorts of things, and you know, there's different chemicals used in different settings, especially in healthcare. So, for example, we were lucky because a lot of our staff became available from hospitals closing down. So it's a question of resource management. And, you know, and what we saw first of all is, you know, how are we going to get up to operating level on the staff? And it's very important. Health and safety, you know, infection control and so on, absolutely critical. And fortunately, you know, the operational team 100% got that. So the first day, I think we had about 25 people, but the big advantage we had, we've got a very large yacht hotel called the Sunborn Yacht, which is at the end of Excel. You know, those are big.
Yes, it's fantastic. Yeah, not I've stayed on it, but it looks great.
Yeah, you've seen that. So that was really good for us because firstly, it gave us accommodation. So if you had to accommodate people that are away, you know, we've got a very big floating facility just right outside. Also, it's got a lot of conference rooms and spaces in there. So we used it as what we call a training academy. This is a concept that we've been developing in the healthcare sector, where people are actually trained in you know, like a mock hospital ward, and we use all sorts of techniques to help train and it, you know, evaluate people as to competence.
Oh,
so
wow.
that's what we actually set up on there. So really, we were following the precepts of 45,001, if you like, you know, going through the planning stage. Don't think they quite got to the check-in stage yet, but kind of an element of monitoring goes in as you go along. But now it's very much what the point where I left it on Good Friday. You know, I think we could say we've gone through the formative stage, and now it's going to what we would call steady state.
From how long then did it take before? Was it sort of 2 weeks approximately? How long did it take?
It's very interesting because you know, people put an exact date or a day on this. So you know, looking at the timescales, the way that I look at it, the first weekend, the survey weekend, don't tend to count that in because that's people kind of looking at it. But when things started, things really did start on the Monday. So that's Monday the 23rd. I call that day one.
Right.
And it was really essentially ready for business, I would say, on Monday the 30th. So that's like day 8. But not with full service, you know. So, but you know, if it would have been more limited, but you had the beds there, you had the bed heads. As far as I know, you had the gas operational. Yep. You know, I have to pay due credit to BOC. You know, you've probably seen photos of these massive, great big oxygen cylinders they put there, storage cylinders, and that's made a big difference because you've got proper pipe gas rather than having to ferry cylinders around, you know, which would be extremely cumbersome. So really it was ready, and then later on it was just really improving the standard of facility, if you like, up to the point when it was officially handed over to Bart's Health Trust. And that was the day that it was opened by Prince Charles. Obviously, it was done remotely because.
Well, that's that as well, isn't it?
3rd of April.
Yeah. Hey, well, we'll have to move on, but by any measure, it was a remarkable undertaking, and congratulations, seriously, to everybody involved. Fantastic. So, thank you for that, John. Thank you ever so much for your time today. So, to John Kersey, if you're interested in AI, please do take a look at John's articles on SHP. Both John and I are on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to link in with us, I'm sure I'd be delighted. John, he seems quite active on there as well, sharing some of another opportunity to share some of the learnings and the tech that he's particularly attracted to. So hopefully you found this useful. I'm sorry, we probably went. I tried to say we'll get this done in about 20 minutes. Got no chance when you've got as much to say as John. It's been an absolute delight, and hopefully when we get through this COVID crisis, I'll get to see you in person, John. And thank you for your time today.
All right, thank you so much, Matt.
Hey, no problem. You take care.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.